Andrew Yang's ideas are not dead, but they are definitely still dumb. Andrew Yang's entire philosophy was based on two things. One, he thought that technology would make people lose jobs, and that B, in order to rectify this, people should give up on the idea of jobs altogether and just take money from the government. A fine state of affairs. Many people have argued about the ridiculousness of UBI, but I'd like to address the first part of this, the fact that technology is going to destroy jobs. One, the federal government's job isn't to create jobs, it's to create an environment where jobs can exist. It's not a job creator. If the government took out 30 people into the middle of the desert and told them to dig up a hole, and took another 30 people and told them to fill that same hole, is any value created? No. Have you created 60 jobs? Yes. Are you going to pay them from whose money? We're not really sure yet, because we don't have any money. For the longest time, we've constantly been told that certain industries need to be protected. Barack Obama himself thought that technology was hurting the economy, and he blamed ATM machines for the fact that the economy was not doing well.
And this goes to the point you're just making, is there are some structural issues with our economy where a lot of businesses have learned to become much more efficient with a lot fewer workers. You see it when you go to a bank and you use an ATM. You don't go to a bank teller. Or you go to the airport and you're using a kiosk instead of checking in at the gate.
Now, I don't know about you, but if you want to live in a world without ATM machines, you can talk to the Indians. If you want to live in teepees and tents and live off of the buffalo with a bow and arrow, and you don't want your locomotives and steam engines, then you could tell those Union Yankees to stop building those railroads and to stop trying to move the Indians west. But reality and the future and technology will move on. You cannot close this Pandora's box. You cannot unmake an apple. Do you understand? Once the technology is made, you are done. So unless you're going to burn down industries like a Luddite, which is what Andrew Yang is, unless you start destroying technology and the future, unless you send us all back into the rice paddies, which is where socialism always leads us to the rice paddies, so we can live off the earth like some Vietnamese guerrilla in the 60s, then I would suggest steering away from this Ted Kaczynski Luddite-esque thinking. So here we are, and just as a reminder, technology has always had these problems. The Luddites of society have always argued against technology. We can't end slavery. We will not have industry anymore. We can't bring the cotton mill. We will not have industry anymore. We can't have the steamship. We will not have industry anymore. We cannot have the vehicle, the automobile. We will kill the horse and buggy industry. Who wants to live in a world full of horse and buggies, slavery, and cotton made the old-fashioned way, and steamboats as opposed to ships, freedom, and longevity? Is your position to end technology? Because that's what it appears to be. That is your position. Whether you mean to or not, your position is to end technology and the future. You're a Luddite, meaning to push us back into the dark ages. Worse than any Islamic terrorist living on top of a mountain who wants to bomb us into the Stone Ages. This one wants us to self-purposely give ourselves up to the slave markets of the rice paddies. No thank you. Now here's a modern petition, the Andrew Yang petition, originally written in 1845, called the Candlemaker's Petition by Frederick Bastiat. That's right, in 1845 they were shooting down these terrible ideas. But no, we have to live with the brand new, the young, the hip, the Andrew Yang, who's supposed to be oh so new and oh so full of great new ideas. It's old, and do not under every time they bring these ideas up, these failed ideas up, they're old. They're not young and new with your little fucking blue hats. They're old and stupid. A revised version of the Candlemaker's Petition called this is the Andrew Yang Petition. A petition from the American Lighting Association, a trade association representing the U.S. lighting industry. U.S. lighting bulb manufacturers, including Aerotech Light Bulb, American Light Bulb Manufacturing Company, LED Radiant, Molstar Electric, LED Green, and the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, the trade union representing American electrical workers. An open letter to the President Trump on behalf of the U.S. lighting industry. You are on the right track when it comes to international trade. You reject abstract economic theories about trade and have no time for the claims that economic abundance and making America great again can come from low import prices. For political purposes, you correctly concern yourself with the fate of U.S. producers and U.S. workers and wisely ignore U.S. consumers. You wish to protect U.S. producers and manufacturers from the more efficient foreign rivals. That is to rightfully reserve the American markets for American producers and their American co-workers to make America great again. We come to offer you a wonderful opportunity for your, what shall I call it, your theory of international trade? No, nothing is more deceptive than economic theory. your trade doctrine, your principle, but you dislike economic doctrines, and as far as principles, you deny that there are any politics or principles. Therefore, we shall call it your political practice, your practice about international trade without any economic theory and without any principle. Simply put, the American lighting industry is suffering from the damaging competition of a foreign rival whose conditions are so far superior to our own for producing light that it is flooding the American market with light at an incredibly low, unfair price. That is, this foreign producer is dumping light into the U.S. economy to our great disadvantage. The moment the foreign rival appears, our sales of lighting fixtures drop precipitously, and all cost-conscious American consumers turn to him, and an important segment of the American industry is reduced to economic stagnation, with an accompanying loss of American jobs and the impoverishment of our country. Who is this foreign rival? It is none other than the sun, and it is waging war on the American lighting industry so mercilessly that we suspect it must be unfairly receiving subsidies that allow it to dump sunlight on the American market at a price so low the cost of production. We seek your protection against this ruthless rival. Specifically, to help make America great again, we ask the Trump administration to save our industry by passing laws that require the permanent closing of all windows, skylights, shutter curtains, and blinds, in short, all openings in U.S. buildings that allow the free natural light of the sun to enter our houses and buildings, to the great disadvantage of the domestic lighting industry. Please don't abandon an important U.S. industry today, a rival at which has an unfair advantage because of such an unfair geographical location. Team Trump, please take our request for protectionism seriously, and do not reject it without hearing the reasons that we have. First, if you pass trade protection to shut off access to natural free light, and thereby create a demand for artificial light, what industry in America will not ultimately be stimulated? If America produces more light fixtures and light bulbs, that will help make America great again by providing new jobs in U.S. manufacturing, U.S. retail, U.S. shipping industries, and for electric workers. Further, with more indoor lighting, there will be an increased demand for electricity, which will make America great by stimulating new jobs in the electric power generation industry. It needs little but reflection, President Trump, to be convinced that there is perhaps not one American, from the wealthy stockholder of Amazon to the humblest convenience store employee, whose condition will not be improved by the success of our petition to combat the unfair advantage that the sphere of hot plasma known as the sun. We anticipate some objections, Mr. President, but there is not a single one of them that we have not recycled from the outdated old discredited books of free trade advocates like Smith, Ricardo, and Friedman. Perhaps you object that through U.S. producers and their employees will benefit from this protection against foreign competition. America will not gain at all because the U.S. consumer will bear expense. We have thought of that and have an answer. Going back to the campaign trail in 2016, you have promised to sacrifice consumers wherever you find his interest opposed to this of U.S. producers. You have done so in order to encourage American industry to increase employment and to make America great again. For the same reason, you ought to do so this time too. Make America great by protecting U.S. lighting industries from the sun. If you grant our industry a monopoly over the production of lighting during the day, we shall buy large amounts of inputs to supply our industry, and moreover, we, our numerous supplies, having become rich, will increase in consumption and spread prosperity throughout the entire U.S. economy, i.e. our monopoly will help make America great again. Now perhaps there are some free trade advocates who will say that the light of the sun is a free gift of Mother Nature, dumped onto the U.S. market daily, and that we reject such philosophy and philanthropy would be a rejection of wealth itself under the pretext of encouraging the means of acquiring it. But if you take this position, you contradict your own trade policy that helped you get elected. Remember that you have proposed excluding foreign goods from U.S. markets because, and in proportion as they approximate free gifts of foreign aid from our trading partners like China, Japan, and Mexico. Labor and nature collaborate in varying proportions depending upon the country and the climate in the production of goods. The part that nature contributes is always free of charge. It is the part contributed by human labor that constitutes value and is paid for. If oranges, tomatoes, and berries from Mexico sell for half the price of those products produced in the United States, it is because the natural heat and light of the sun, which is of course free of charge, does for Mexico what U.S. states owe to artificial heating and lighting, which necessarily is reflected in the higher prices for American produce. Thus, when tomatoes reach us from Mexico, one can say that they are sold to us half free of charge, or in other words, at half price compared to those from the U.S. Now, it's precisely on the basis that Mexican and Chinese goods are being provided semi-free to American consumers that you maintain that American producers deserve protectionism. But if products like tomatoes or berries from Mexico are sold in America half-free leads you to impose trade protection for U.S. farmers to exit from NAFTA, how can you allow an imported product being sold totally free of charge, like sunlight, to enter the U.S. market without protective tariffs? to be consistent. If you decide to exit NAFTA or impose new trade barriers on what is half free of charge like Mexican tomatoes and berries because they are harmful to our economy, how can you not exclude the American market what is totally gratuitous? Free sunlight, with even more justification, with twice the enthusiasm. Mr. President, when it comes to U.S. trade policy, please be consistent. For as long as you plan to exit NAFTA and continue to impose tariffs on foreign steel, solar panels, aluminum, lumber, aircraft, washing machines, and textiles in proportions to their prices approaches zero, how inconsistent it would be to freely admit the light of the sun into the U.S. market, whose price is zero all day long. In conclusion, to make America great again and bring jobs back to the U.S., we implore you, Mr. President Trump, to protect the American lighting industry by protecting us from a foreign rival that provides natural sunlight at a price so low, zero, that we simply cannot compete. If there ever was a legitimate case for a foreign producer putting American producers and workers at an unfair disadvantage through unfair trade practices, that might include dumping goods below cost, receiving foreign subsidies, or manipulating currency, the case against the sun for dumping free sunlight in America has to be the strongest trade case ever in U.S. history, and one deserving of your attention. Please protect us.